started. So once again, welcome to the Class of 2023 series. We're delighted that you're here. We know it's a little chilly outside, so hopefully you're somewhere warm. So my name is Missy Frazen. I work in career services at UIC, and we are delighted. We have a wonderful presenter with us today. Her name is Liz Herrera, and she is the director of the LAS Career Development Office, the Career Development and Internships Office. And she has lots of great knowledge and expertise, and it's just a lot of fun. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy today's presentation. We do hope that you will engage, ask questions, comments, all that good stuff. And I'm going to stop talking so we actually can give you on to the person you're going to want to hear from today. And Liz is today going to talk about job searching. And the only other thing I'll say is that we have a bunch of other workshops in the Class of 2023 series after spring break on Tuesday, March 28th. I'll be presenting about resumes. So we hope you come back. We have resumes, we have interviewing, lots of great information. But Liz, I will let you take it away. And again, Liz, thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much for presenting. We're just delighted to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. I love talking about job search strategies. And I hope that everybody that joined us today will leave with new information and some strategies to jumpstart your job search or your internship search or wherever you may be in your career journey. So again, Liz Herrera, I'm the Director of Career Development within LAS, and I'm going to go ahead and dive in. We're going to try to make this as interactive as possible, but I do want to share some goodies with all of you. I like to call them my job search secrets. You may already know some of them, but we'll see how it goes. So just give me a second while I share my screen, and we can get started. All right. Here is the PowerPoint, and let's get this party started.
All right, Liz, it looks great. We can definitely see it.
You see the full presentation?
Yep, looks
all
great.
Right, good. Awesome. Okay, you know how you always want to make sure you don't see like the little side thing.
Exactly. No,
Missy, if people have questions, so I'll tell students any questions you have as I'm going through the presentation. Missy will be helping me out in addressing your questions. So don't feel like you're interrupting me, because if you have a thought, write it out and I'll get to it right away. All right. So the first thing I'm curious is, first of all, who's in the room? If I can, just see in the chat, you're a senior, an alum. If you could put your major too, that'd be awesome. So whatever year you are, and then what your major is. That would be fantastic for me to kind of see. I'll give you some time. I know. Master of Public Health student, senior marketing, first year grad MS Health Informatics. Okay, we still got some graduate students here. Awesome, congratulations. Well, 2022. Probably feels like it was just yesterday. Occupational therapy, PhD, health informatics, nursing, senior management. All right. I love it. All right. So there's a wide range of individuals here, from the PhD level to undergrads, graduate program, professional school. I am curious, what brought you here today? So what are, this is obviously launching your job search. What are some of your, I guess, pain points? What are your biggest job search challenges? I want to see, if my presentation is aligned with some of your concerns. What brings you in today? What are some of those job search challenges that I hope to address today? And one thing I'll say is, if you're comfortable unmuting yourself, I welcome that as well. A lot of different titles.
I don't know how to type this out exactly, but
yeah,
unsure of kind of. I feel like a lot of times when you're searching for a job, you're searching for a job title, but when you're not exactly sure what that title looks like, I feel like that's kind of like the challenge that I'm encountering.
Yeah, that's fair. And trying to figure out, what exactly it looks like. 'Cause every organization is different. Every organization uses different job titles, or you might fit into a variety of roles. And it's not as, cookie cutter. So that could be a good thing, but that can also be a challenge in terms of searching. So we'll definitely talk about that. All right, good. That was really good. Somebody else put the same thing. A lot of, different titles. I'd like to know what job search engines I should use. Just started looking for jobs in Indeed and LinkedIn. We're definitely going to talk about job search engines as well as LinkedIn, how to leverage LinkedIn. I think a lot of people have a LinkedIn profile, but maybe don't know how to quite maximize it. So we're definitely going to address some of those. How to identify qualities that I can transfer to different types of roles. All right, so yeah, your transferable skills. That's key. All right, any others? Mass applying to jobs can be exhausting, especially when there is significant discrepancy between the ratio of applications to offers. Applying to 100 jobs and only getting one offer, right? So this is why I like calling this, creating an effective job search, because you're right. I think there's so much time and energy that you put in the job hunt. And I want to make sure that you are using strategies that are efficient. Of course, full transparency, this does take time and there's more than one approach. But I think that there are ways to save some of your time and energy if you have an organized and focused job search rather than, kind of just putting yourself in every single area and just going in blindly. So if I can offer some insight and some, strategies on how to refine your search and make things a little bit easier for you, that's what I want to accomplish today. So thank you so much. This is a good one.
Yeah, there's one more comment. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, this is a good, thank you, Miss. Yeah, this is a good one. Should I apply to jobs that I only meet a few qualifications? I'm gonna address that now because that's a great question. So it is very rare that you're gonna meet 100% of the qualifications. And if that's the case, it's probably a job that's in your wheelhouse, right? And I'm imagining that you want to apply to something that is next level, maybe something that requires your college degree. So, and I'm going to say this, especially with women, we tend to apply to things that, we screen ourselves out of opportunities because we don't meet 100% of the qualifications. So there are ways to navigate that. A lot of times these employers or recruiters are putting everything in the kitchen sink, and you have to really recognize what you are unique in and what you bring to the table. So if you meet the minimum qualifications, but you bring other things, like I always encourage people to apply. Don't screen yourself out if you can make a case. Working with our offices is huge because we can help you identify what those transferable skills can look like. But I always say, if it's something that you're interested in and you're like, that is my next level, but I'm scared, a little bit of fear is part of this process, but don't let that be a barrier to your job search. So I'm a huge proponent of putting yourself out there and applying, but being mindful too, right? So if you're a recent grad and you see a job for someone with 10 years of experience that has a master's degree, you just finished your undergraduate degree, then maybe that might not be the role at this moment. But if there's some, wiggle room there, I think that people do screen themselves out when you don't have to. But yeah, great comment and question, Kaylee. All right, so moving on, I'm going to go ahead and minimize my thing here. So just a quick fact, and I imagine that you all already know this. I didn't know what kind of participants I would get today, but it's always a good reminder as we're going through this. Someone mentioned in the chat, yes, there is an average of 250, applicants per position. So again, today I want to talk about ways that you can stand out, go through that hidden job market, navigate this process. Out of the 250, 3 to 6 candidates are called for interviews. So how do you make yourself stand out so that you are one of those qualified candidates that you get, selected for an interview? And of course, the way to go about it is through the people that you know, people that you talk to. You may not know people yet, but that's something that I encourage, is connecting with people. So even if you don't feel like you have a solid network, this is the time to start making those connections. And I will definitely be talking about ways to leverage LinkedIn and your resources to start having conversations with key people beyond recruiters, because I think a lot of different people can be um, gateways into opportunities that you probably have not considered. So I'm sure many of you have heard that 70% of jobs are found through word of mouth. And one of the things that I want to really focus when thinking about your job search is stepping out of your comfort zone. And you all know what that looks like, whether it's, attending that event and maybe you're going by yourself, or going to a career fair for the first time, or maybe you didn't have the best experience at a career fair, but, giving it another go. A lot of this is definitely scary. It's not something that we do all the time. And so talking to people, attending events, applying to positions that, feel a little more high level than you would think, those are all parts of this process. And that is all part of stepping out of your comfort zone. So as you're going through this, I want you to ask yourself, okay, am I scared, or is this my opportunity to step out of my comfort zone? And I've been doing this for over 15 years. I've worked with job seekers across the board, from entry level to PhDs, to established professionals, to career transitioners. And I will tell you that the secret ingredient is when people do things beyond their level of comfort. So that's one of the biggest components of this process. All right, so the job search, it requires time, consistency, and patience. I always like to remind people that there are things that are going to be within your control and things that are not in your control. So really knowing the difference between the two. And for me, I think about preparation. You can control your preparation, where you position yourself. You're here today, so that tells me that you are invested in creating a strategic way of approaching your job search and maximizing your resources. We are in a candidate-driven market. I know you're hearing mixed things, right now with the tech space, we saw these, these layoffs, but people making these career moves, these career changes. And there are definitely opportunities that I'm seeing every day. Again, do not screen yourself out. I would rather get that email being told that I wasn't qualified for a position, or that they went with another candidate, than me myself not applying to something because I didn't think that I was qualified when maybe I was the perfect match for that role. Don't take it personal. This is a hard one. I admit. I've been on the job search. I've gone through interviews, and it's hard not to take it personal, but it's really about learning from each job search experience and moving forward. So try not to take it personal that, every company is looking for, that one candidate. And I've heard stories too, where they don't necessarily go with the best candidate for a number of reasons that, again, may be outside of your control. You want to be flexible about your methods. So if you're applying every day using online job boards, and you've been at it for a month and you're not getting any interviews, any calls, I really encourage you to work with a career coach, because they may provide some ideas to redirect your search. And sometimes, we're just so stuck in doing things a certain way that may be comfortable. And so people can provide insight on other strategies. All right, so what I want you to do, whatever you're using, whether it's a sheet of paper, if you're typing something on your computer, whatever it is, I really want you to brainstorm ideas. I'm almost treating this as a coaching session. Obviously, I'm not going back and forth asking questions, but this is similar to how I would approach working with someone getting ready for the job hunt. I'm going to pause. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts so far based on kind of my intro? You can process, you can put it in the chat box. Thank you, Missy. I'll let you navigate that. All right, so this is the agenda for today. Now, I don't know how much we're going to actually cover today, but I will tell you that you will all get a copy of this PowerPoint, which I incorporate pieces of the job search process. So you can use this as a job search guide. But basically, the job search process is the following. self-reflection. You have to know yourself. You have to know your starting point before you can go anywhere. So I could never start a job search with like, all right, let's apply online. Let's look at some job search engines. You need to know yourself. What are your values? What are your non-negotiables? What skills do you want to use in that next role? What kind of organizational culture you're looking for? What kind of populations do you want to work with? So there's a lot of self discovery and reflection that you need to go through before you even begin the job search process. And then, once you start thinking about where you want to go, and it could be a career pivot, it can be that you're changing industries. This is where you really need to think about your points of marketability. What do you bring to the table? And so not dismissing your experiences, because you've all had some type of work experience where you've built skills that are going to be applicable in a variety of roles. The next piece is knowing how to tell your story. I think all part of this job search process is storytelling. We're telling our story on LinkedIn, on our resumes, in our cover letters, on our personal, statements, our personal brand. So really owning that narrative is going to be extremely important. Also, when you're talking to people. So when someone is able to articulate with me what they're looking to do, it's easier to guide that process. Now, don't confuse this. I do work with people that have no idea where to start, and that's part of my job as well, to help you articulate that story. The next piece is polishing your professional package, right? So getting your resume reviewed, getting your cover letter reviewed, your LinkedIn profile. So all of those things you're going to need for that job hunt, whether you're going to career fair, maybe it's a referral. So your package needs to be up to date. You have to have an online presence. And I'm not saying that you have to be, posting on Facebook, Instagram, but, I think LinkedIn is a great place to establish that online presence, that visibility, to make connections and to let people know that you are on the job hunt. You want to identify companies of interest, some job boards, which I'm going to give you some ideas of how to get started with that. Establishing your network, expanding your network. One of the things that I love about working at UIC and working with my colleagues in the different career offices is that because we've been here for a while, we've established relationships with alumni, but also professionals in diverse industries. Help us connect people with you. We want to connect you. I love making connections with some of my former students, with current students. And that's something that you can certainly do and might be a little bit easier for you instead of cold calling. And then, of course, practicing that mock interview, which all the career offices, I believe, offer that service. So taking advantage of these resources. So this is the agenda, but also the job search process. So this takes time, right? This is not done in one day. And, Missy mentioned earlier the Career Readiness series. So I know she's going to dive into resume writing. There's going to be other workshops, salary negotiation that I'm not going to go into today, but these are all part of that process. All right. So what I want you to do, I want you to take out that sheet of paper that I mentioned, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to reflect, because this is going to be helpful for me as I'm demoing certain parts of the job search process. So I want just brainstorm. You could do bullet points. This is what I like to do during a job search coaching session. I want you to think about the types of roles you're looking for. Are they leadership, managerial, entry level, right? We have a diverse group of people. Are you doing research? What kinds of organizations are you looking for? What type of industries are you looking to going into the nonprofit, pharmaceutical, healthcare? Are you going into government, education, higher education? So there are a lot of different, areas, technology. Think about the things that you value, right? What's important to you? Wellness programs, vacation days, access to free education, travel. Do you want to work for a small organization, a large organization, that they focus on DEI initiatives, and also thinking about your non-negotiables. So some of you who may have more experience, you might already know, like, you know what? I don't want to work in an organization that has this type of organizational structure. So it's okay to have your, what you are selecting. What is it that you want to explore? Because that's going to help you as a job seeker weed out organizations that may not be a good match for you. So someone earlier asked, like, I don't know what kind of job titles. I like to take it a step back. And when you're applying for positions, is starting with an organization, right? So you want to be able to do work that aligns with the things that you care about, with your values. And then the other piece, of course, is really important are your skills. What skills do you want to bring to the table? You're a collaborator. You like to work in a team. You want to use your data skills, your problem solving. That's important. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes to jot down whatever comes to mind based on these buckets. So I'm going to give you some time to write some stuff down. All right, so again, this is just kind of a snapshot, just a starting point. One of the things that I like to share when I'm working with a student, I have it in the slides, in everything. Again, I have links to. It's our career discovery guide. And so this is really helpful. Like if you're working with one of our offices, even bringing that with you, where it's 4 buckets, where you identify your skills, a bucket that shows your values, your interests, and then what maybe populations or areas you're interested in. And that can really take a deeper dive in the conversation where, someone can even be more supportive in helping you come up with ideas that align with your professional identity and what would be good roles that align with what it is that you want to do. So I think a lot of times job seekers fail to look within before they actually start their job search process. So I'm huge on this process. So that's what we spend a lot of time on the self-reflection piece, because I feel like this is the part that's always missing. And after all, we want you to look for things that align with what it is that you want to do, job satisfaction, and that you're going to thrive in your next role. So really being intentional. All right. Is there a question? Okay. Oh, Missy, you're putting all the great tools on there. Thank you.
Of course, this is really great and very informational. So I will keep you posted if we have something that we really want to address. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So the other piece is getting organized. I always like to talk about, my husband has been laid off several times. So I always go through this. I've been through this process a number of times with him. And the biggest piece is getting organized. So you have to organize your search. So that way it just brings you, it's just easier. So one thing that I want to mention is create an address, an email address specifically for your job search. I know, like, I have multiple emails and I get spammed all over the place. So you don't want to miss an email from an employer. The other strategy is also creating that Excel sheet, which I imagine all of you probably have one, where you can organize your search. I put a link here to a platform called Teal. It's free, and you can really organize your job search through that platform. There are a lot of really cool online tools that you can use to organize your job search if that works for you. But if you're more like, you know what, I just want an Excel sheet, that's helpful. I always say start with 40 companies. 40 companies can help you really feel like, okay, I have this broad approach. These are the companies I want to target. So today I mentioned, create a list. Let's say you're like, well, I can only identify 5. That means we need to do some research because there are thousands and thousands of companies that you are unaware of. And so LinkedIn, again, is a great place to start. I'm even going to say this and I don't want to cringe because I like TikTok, but I've had students who have discovered companies that we've talked about, but they hear it on TikTok. I had a student who is a recent college grad, and she's like, Liz, I heard about a company named Accenture. And I'm like, yes. And she learned it on TikTok. She did her research. Needless to say, this is a social science major undergrad student, applied to Accenture, went through the interview process, got her first job. It was April, graduated in May, and she's been there for a year, almost a year. So using social media to learn about different companies that exist, identifying people that work in these organizations. So, I feel like UIC, we have such a large group of alumni. So even connecting with alumni, I'm going to show you a few features on LinkedIn and how to do that. And you always want to keep track of your job applications and deadlines, because following up is going to be very key in the job search. I've heard stories where employers are like, oh, this person didn't follow up. You're not bothering people. You may not get a response, but I always encourage you to follow up. Now, you don't want to say, I submitted my resume yesterday. Where am I in the process? Process takes time. But if someone says, we're going to get back to you in a week and you haven't heard back, there's no harm in following up. So giving people enough time. I'm going to share this, when I've been on the recruiting side, and like for me, I'm like, I know the process takes some time. When I hear back from the people that I'm very interested in hiring and they follow up with me, that gives me relief, because I'm like, they followed up. That means they're still interested, because you're candidates and you're also out there searching, and people these companies are recruiting you, and there's competition out there. So you are a commodity for a lack of a better word. So leverage that power as well. It's a two-way street. So here's some organizations, or rather job search engines. This is just a short list. So obviously UIC Handshake. I'm curious, how many of you, does anybody have any questions about Handshake? How are you all using Handshake? Because this is a big one. Like, you all pay tuition. Like, this is a great tool to explore. Any thoughts or questions about UIC Handshake? You all know you have access to Handshake? I'd love to see in the chat box, yes, no. Yes, awesome. All right, so it's not just having an account, it's searching for opportunities, attending career fairs, right? So there are a lot of career fairs. I know Career Services has their career fair March 30th, Missy? Is that right?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Thursday, March 30th. So you guys, we have spring break next week. And then after that Thursday we come back, we have a really big job fair called the All Majors Fair.
These job fairs are great opportunities to connect with recruiters, even if maybe the jobs that they're recruiting for are not like they're listed on the website. Maybe it's not something you're interested in, but maybe you want to work there. Like, this is a great way to actually make connections. All right, so you're saying not fond of the jobs it automatically gives you. Yeah, so you have to go that extra step, right? And not necessarily rely on, it's just filtering based on your profile. So you want to take that deeper dive and narrow some of your job search keywords that you're using on Handshake. So leveraging that tool can be extremely helpful, and even identifying companies. So again, creating that list, like I challenge you to create at least 40 companies of interest, and Handshake could be a great way to do that. All right. So
Say,
what I
Liz.
go for
Oh,
it.
sorry. Yeah, just two quick things. So, one for the person who says that you're not liking the positions. Like Liz said, like you really want to fill out your profile like as fully as you can. You can put your interests, you can put your skills. Sometimes I think people fill out their profile really fast, and then it's sort of like the more you feed Handshake essentially about you, generally the smarter Handshake gets, and then the better positions potentially it's going to match you with. So just something to think about. And obviously you can meet with an advisor, we can help you really work through that profile. But the more you feed Handshake, generally the better food essentially, right, you're going to get out of Handshake. So try not to neglect the profile. And then Liz, we did have a question. Somebody
Yeah.
was asking, but it was like a quick one, and so I think it's sort of like easy to not see it. Somebody said, should I apply to a job without contacting anyone working there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're seeing something and you're like, this seems amazing, this is interesting, definitely don't hold back and say like, oh, I'm not gonna apply until I talk to someone. If you are in the zone, you're ready, apply, get that application out there. But I would take it a step further and find that company on LinkedIn if you haven't done so. And I would actually start the process, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say, for instance, I'm going to just use UIC as an example. So let's say you're like, oh, I'm applying to career development office. And so you're applying and you see that I work at UIC Career Services. You see, Tan and Missy, Lauren. I would reach out for an informational interview. And again, going back to your values and the things that you care about, what you're looking for, it's always helpful to connect with someone on the inside. So when people reach out to me like, oh, not that they're asking me for a job, you never want to reach out for an informational interview to ask for a job. But if, someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I just applied for a position in this department at UIC, what's been your experience at UIC? I love talking about my experience at UIC and how I've navigated, and even some tips. I love sharing resources and insight that could help that person. Like, let's say you get called for that job interview, you can even talk about that. Like, oh, I've talked to some people in the organization and I'm really excited to learn about XYZ. So it can be helpful to make those connections with people on the inside because it can be beneficial in a number of ways.
Hey,
Great
Liz,
question.
can I just ask you like a quick follow-up on that?
Mhm.
So sometimes people will say, like, do you recommend you try to do an informational interview with somebody at the organization before you submit like your resume and cover letter, or do you feel like it doesn't matter? I've heard different opinions about like the timing of the informational interview, potentially if you can find someone to talk to versus when you actually submit your job application.
Yeah, that's also a really great question. It is about timing and also like the deadline of the application. Some organizations, I know there's organizations where they can't start calling people for interviews until the deadline. So let's say, for instance, there's a job and it closes March 30th. And you're like, well, I have to write a cover letter, a resume, it's asking for all these things, but I'm on the fence. This has happened where people have contacted me, want to learn more about the department or whatever the case. And then they're like, that's not for me. And so it saves you time. And you may not want to continue with the application process. And then again, you always want to take what people say with a grain of salt, but you may learn things. I know I've had, there's been job postings that I'm privy to what the job entails. And it sounds a little different on the job description. And then people have reached out to colleagues asking about more about what the position entails or whatever the case. And then they realize like, oh, it's actually not what I thought. So that can certainly be helpful if you want to save time and energy. But it depends on your time frame and the deadline of the job posting.
That's great. Thanks, Liz. I was just curious because I've heard so many different things about like the timing of an informational interview versus when you apply. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I see another question on here. What's your experience with job postings that don't have, let's see, that don't have a closing date? How long is the application actually open for? After how long of it being up, would it be a waste of my time to apply? That don't have a closing date. That's a great question, and that's hard. I think every organization is different in how they manage their job search. Sometimes people don't update their websites I would try to cross-reference to see if there are any other closing dates, or I would actually find someone in the organization and find out, I came across this posting and want to know if this opportunity is still open. So like if you can find some information beforehand, if there's no closing date, because I feel like there's been organizations guilty of keeping their postings up and they're expired. So I would want to do a little more legwork before investing time into the application. That's my professional kind of opinion or how I would approach it. But if it's something that I absolutely love and I'm like, this just seems perfect for me, I'm going to give it a go and submit my application. And that reminds me too, that I like to apply, or, when I was encouraging my husband to, when he was applying to things, or when I work with job seekers, apply for the ones that have, that were posted recently. Like I like to just target those new dates, the more current positions, because sometimes certain companies might already be going through the interview process and the job posting is still open. So I would say that the sooner you see something that you're interested in, the sooner I recommend applying.
Liz, we have a couple of additional questions. Sounds like somebody had an interview recently, but it sounds like they haven't heard back, and I think they're asking about just like a follow-up timeline, like what would you recommend? And then we have another one, but let's take that first question.
Recently had a job interview, but don't know what their closing date is. When should I follow up with them? Yeah, Norma, that's a great question. So if you said it's been, how long was your job interview? Like how long ago was it?
Yeah, Norma, if you could, it was on Monday. It was yesterday. Holy moly.
Okay, so there's still some time, right? So I would say give it, I think 2-week window is good, because you might have been the first person they interviewed, and every organization is different in terms of their timeline. Obviously, I would, I imagine you've already sent the thank you so much for the opportunity. And then you can even ask, when would it be okay for me to follow up? What's your timeline? So that the thank you is a good opportunity to follow up with that question. But in preparation, because I imagine you're going to be doing more interviews, always ask that at the end, right? When do I expect to hear from you? What is your timeline? Because I know every timeline could be different. There are places where it takes months. Like when I applied for this position, it took 3 months to finally get, to somewhere. And so, but some organizations might be a little bit faster. So definitely follow up, because that shows that you're interested. Now, as you're going through the job search process, don't put all your eggs in one basket, is that how you say it? Because you don't know what, following up is good, but keep the momentum going. Don't feel like, oh, well, I'm going to wait. Because if, I would say keep applying, because if they come back a month later and they're like, hey, we want to continue the next steps, you might have multiple offers. And that's a really good position to be in, to have multiple offers, because then you can negotiate and then you can make, you have choices. So don't feel like, oh, I might get this job offer, I don't want to open up other opportunities yet. Create as many opportunities as you can for yourself.
Okay, Liz, this is the next question. It said, if I can't find anyone in my network working at that company, should I contact the contact person in the post for an informational interview?
I would definitely, if there's a contact person there, their information is out there, I say it's all fair game. In an informational interview, you can even just, to learn about, again, the organization you're shopping. You're taking the time to want to work in this organization. I want to know what the culture is like. I want to know what it's like to work with people there. That's important to me, right? So that is something that you can certainly do. Now, there might be policies, or some people may not be comfortable meeting with you. So again, using LinkedIn to find other people that work there, that can be also valuable. Even if they're not hiring managers, they may actually be more honest with you. You just never know what you're going to get. And so I think that can be something that you can certainly strategize and talking to people. That's like the biggest takeaway I would say, from this is is connecting and chatting with people within these organizations. I've heard so many stories of how people get a foot in the door just by having, a simple conversation. I love, there's a ton of questions. Is there another one, Missy, that I'm like missing here? Oh, if the job post does not provide a salary range, should I ask the contact person? Yeah, there's always debate with this, right? Like, you don't want to bring it up in the first interview, but I feel that when you're applying, it's really tricky. And again, it depends on where you're applying, but I honestly believe that information should be public. That's my belief. I feel like people shouldn't waste time if it's not within your range. If someone asks me like, oh, what's the salary range? What's budgeted for this position? If they can't answer that, that's just because of certain HR policies. But that is not a bad question to ask. I just think that we're living in different times. But that's something that I would, before even you're applying, I think that's a fair question. Now, when you're in a job interview, I would, wait a little bit before you start talking about salary. But beforehand in applying, I would definitely address the salary question. And I know probably, Missy, you're going to be talking about that. What are your thoughts, Missy? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, we're definitely talking about that. We're going to talk both about negotiating, but I think also like how can we realistically form expectations for what kind of salary we're looking for, especially given the kind of positions we're looking at. We use TikTok. It's actually like a super fun workshop. So FYI, it's on April 12th. No pressure. I think like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I think things were kind of different, I would say, about the salary. I agree with you, Liz. I think there's been like a lot of changes. I also think it's sort of industry specific, like a little bit. I think some industries are like more upfront with, posting the salary. Other industries aren't as upfront. So I usually would try to do some crazy Google research and like use payscale.com and use like salary.com and try to see if I can sort of like guesstimate what that salary might be if it's not posted on the job. I think it's hard because if you ask at the beginning or even before an interview, unfortunately, some people then associate like, oh, Missy's just asking because she's really money hungry. No, Missy's asking because Missy's trying to figure out if this is maybe going to be a good fit given my expenses and my life and things like that. So it's still like, I think to some extent taboo to some extent, but I also think a lot more positions just in general are posting it on the actual job description. And you also could try to do some Google research. Like, for example, like sometimes if that company has an office in another city, like I believe in Colorado and I think maybe New York, there's certain states now where it's required to post the salary on the job description. It's not in Illinois yet. I'm hoping that will be coming. So sometimes you can try to do some research, and obviously the cost of living is different in different places, but sometimes you can kind of do some kind of crazy guerrilla research yourself and sort of attempt to resurrect what that salary would be. But you can ask too, but I just know some people don't respond well to that, and it's hard to say, right? Because you don't know these people and you really don't know the company.
Yeah, so that's thank you, Missy. And I think it's very subjective, a lot of this stuff, because everybody's different personality and thoughts. My thought from like the hiring standpoint, I would want to share that information because I wouldn't want you to get my hopes up where I interview you and you're amazing and I want you on my team, but I can't afford you. And then I'll be mad. So I'll be like, you were so great. But if I would have just been transparent from the beginning, so that's my approach in wanting to be transparent, but as Missy's saying, some people might be a little more traditional and not appreciate that. So there's some risk taking involved as well. All right, so these are great questions. Keep them coming. Here are some job search engines that you can explore. But the other thing too, as Missy was saying, like what is it, guerrilla search? I like that. You can even go Google like best website to search for jobs in. Can someone type in something, a keyword of like what you're looking for specifically?
Do you mean like an industry or like a state, like jobs in, what do you mean?
Like engineering, marketing, public health, higher education. Just so that I can demo for you.
All right, we have a vote for school occupational therapy. Sounds like it's almost like pediatric, maybe, or school occupational therapy.
That's very specific. All right, let's see what pops up. So many times, like this is very specific. There are, if you can do a search by, area, so it's just best website for jobs in, and then you would put your keyword. And so this can be just a way to find more niche areas. So here, I see there's, associations, which obviously you are familiar with, but it helps to look at something that's more niche and more specific. Keep in mind that there are associations or organizations that may only post their jobs in niche related job search engines. So like here at UIC, like if you're working in a school, like we're not posting things because it costs money to post. We're not going to be posting on Indeed or, Career Builder. We're going to post jobs in where we know we're going to find our people. So higher, in higher ed, career development specific websites, like if you're in the career development space. So also being strategic in the job search engines that you're using, because there are a lot of niche areas. So that would be, going in that way. I see another one that says health informatics. Health informatics. So here are, some ideas of other places that you can explore. So these are just some examples of how to, again, narrow your search in those specific industries that maybe you had not considered. And I know public health has a ton of different areas that you can look at. APHA, they have their own job search platform. So you can really get into very niche areas for public health. All right, so I just wanted to demo that. I hope I was showing the right screen here.
Yeah, you were for sure. Yep.
Okay. All right, so just some ideas for exploration. One of the things that I also encourage you to do as you are conducting your job search is to take inventory of your experience, talking about your transferable skills and what you want to do. People tend to undervalue experiences because they're not fancy titles, or they were unpaid experiences. So definitely capturing that. I've worked with people that, I had one student that she started her own nonprofit, and she didn't have it on her resume because it was unpaid. And so it was a game changer when she started talking about it in her cover letter, her interviews, because she started this nonprofit. Research experience. Many of you have this research experience, your clinicals, your preceptorships, your applied practice experiences, your global experiences. Some of you might be, thinking like, I've been in school for most of my time and I haven't really had tangible outside paid experiences, but projects, if you've been involved in capstones or, working with faculty, those are things you can certainly include. So this is just to give you an idea, when I'm working with professionals or students, that they tend to leave out pertinent experience that can really speak volumes to employers, and things that you probably didn't even think about. I'll even go beyond and saying even service, customer service. I work with undergrads, and so I've had students who have worked in the service industry and they're embarrassed to include some of these roles, but that's their experience. That's where they have the skills. I'll tell you this, I had one student I was working with, she had McDonald's on her resume. She worked there for like 3 years, and she got an interview because she went to a career fair, and the employer asked her about her McDonald's experience because they know that how hard it would be to work in that service industry. And she had the transferable skills of working under pressure, working with difficult people, working on a very tight timeline or whatever the case. And so that helped her. And she was shocked. I wasn't shocked, but she was shocked. So all these things really make a difference. So taking inventory of your experiences. It's helpful to talk to someone about this. Again, we're gonna have all kinds of appointments, colleagues in career services, because you all have access to an office, and these are the conversations we'll have with you, is really helping you pull out some of the experiences that can align with what your goals are. I just wanted to share here, I think this is really important and thinking back on transferable skills. The National Association of Colleges and Employers, they do a survey where they they basically reach out to a variety of employers across industries to see, what are the skills that they're looking for. So this can be helpful for you as well to see what employers are looking for and how do you sell this in your storytelling, in your experience, right? So instead of saying like, I have problem solving skills, how do you incorporate that in your bullet points? How do you show that you have strong written communication skills? So it's not just a matter of listing the skills, but showing them through your resume, your cover letter, and in your job interviews. Question?
Yeah, there's a question somebody who is getting a PhD, maybe they have a PhD and they're wondering about if the job only requires a master's, should they list their PhD in the education section? Some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. So it sounds like the student is just want to know your opinion.
This is always a hard question. And I say this because you spend money and time in getting this college degree. And not to, there are people that apply to positions that don't require a PhD, but still list it on their resume. Again, that's another one of those things that could be subjective. I've been in conversations in job search committees where people will say this person is overqualified, they have a PhD. Maybe that's not the position for you. I feel like that's a tricky one. I feel like I've heard both sides. Like I've worked with people that have PhDs that are, again, in positions that didn't require a PhD. Some people might value that in certain spaces, depending on your industry. I know that I've talked to recruiters, like let's say in the pharmaceutical industries, in the healthcare industries, where they do value a PhD. So it's really going to depend on the environment. And so these are questions that you could also ask during an informational interview, because it really can depend on organization. My own personal opinion, it's like, if I worked hard for a credential, I wouldn't want to leave it out. But that's me. So I would say, that's up to you. Yep. All right. So again, link to the Outlook. Is there another question?
No, I just suggested something. No, you're doing great.
All right. Awesome. All right. And I just wanted to share that employers plan to hire 14.7% more new graduates from class of 2023 as they did in 2022. So some of you who are graduating this semester and getting ready for your job search, I thought this would be a nice motivator and encouragement for all of you. All right. So in terms of your points of marketability, your value proposition, these are questions, again, that I always like to ask when, working with someone one-on-one. Again, this is a presentation where I just want to kind of lay out the cards for you, but these are important conversations to have with somebody else, right? So really identifying those skills, thinking of examples. I was just talking to a friend who is in the career development space and she's applying for, a higher level position. And she's like, Liz, I struggle to talk about my stories. And she's in career development, right? So this is not easy for many of us. And so you want to be prepared in really reflecting on your past experiences, your contributions, where you've made an impact, where your pain points. Take a look at your resume. Do you feel like your resume tells that story of where you've made an impact, where your skills have been utilized by companies, employers, team projects? Are you the go-to person for something? I think once you really understand what you bring to the table, and all of you bring something to the table, that gives you confidence in your search, and again, how you're presenting yourself in your professional package. And so these are just some questions that I like to ask when I'm coaching someone through this process and helping them really articulate their skills. And this is helpful. Some of you might be coming to resume sessions. When someone shows me their resume, I don't just like, oh, the bullet points are off. Yeah, there's aesthetic things. I care about the content. Like, tell me more about you. Like, does this resume capture the things that you have accomplished. And this is not a time to be modest. Like, you have to own those experiences, which I'm gonna talk a little bit about because it's a huge part of the job search as well. I'm pausing just in case. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I know this is more of an informative, it's not as fun of a presentation, but it's more like just information, just to kind of keep thinking about your job search.
Yeah, and if you guys do have questions, obviously you could unmute yourself, you could put them in the chat. But I think that's such a great question that Liz asked. Like, does your resume like reflect, right, the strengths and all the wonderful things that you're bringing? Because that is what an employer is going to be looking at when they look at your resume. So it's a really wonderful question that she just posed to all of us.
So so once you've done that reflection piece, you're kind of, really organizing your where you want to go, what you want to do. You have some direction, and you're just not aimlessly applying to things. I always say create a master resume. Create a master resume where you, again, that inventory of all your experiences. Some of you have way more experience than others, but we forget about the things that we do. If you're on a committee, if you led a task force, if you were part of a project, I mean, all those things, maybe you've been acknowledged in a publication, including all those things is going to be really important. And this is for your eyes only, because you will, again, forget. And the reason why I say this is because I'm sure that you all know that you have to tailor your resume. And I think this is the most frustrating part for job seekers, because it takes a lot of time, and I get it. And it can feel draining. And so if you're going to be applying for positions, like, I would rather target and tailor 5 organizations that I care about, positions that I actually want to do, than to send the same general resume to 100 places with no direction. So this is why it's important to really think about where you want to go and what it is that you want to do. And so this is just some tips as you're thinking about, updating your resume, what to include, just again, reinforcing some of my other points. And I always like to mention this piece here, that there are 3 audiences. So one is that applicant tracking system. You all are going to be applying online many times, right? So when you are applying online, you're going to get screened out by an AI, like, do you have the specific skills that they're looking for? And so making sure that those keywords align with the job posting. Then you'll have a recruiter. Recruiters are hired to help hiring managers find the right person. Make yourself easy to find. So, again, aligning those experiences that you have to the job posting. Then the hiring manager, they're the ones who want to see the stories. They're going to look at your resume and really see where you really shine, what key and unique contributions you've made. And obviously, they're the ones who make the ultimate decision in your application. I'm going to skip that.
Hey, Liz, we have a
Yes.
question about, sorry to interrupt you. We have a question about somebody who says they haven't worked in a couple years and they want to know the best ways to talk about why there's a job gap. I put a couple of ideas in the chat, but I said that I would ask you to and see what thoughts you have about a job gap.
Yeah, I feel like that gap experience has been normalized. I think with the pandemic, I think the conversations have definitely shifted. And even I want to say LinkedIn even has a feature where you can show that you've had gaps in your experience. I think it really humanizes you, right? So if you had to, deal with a family situation, you don't have to go into too much detail, but acknowledging, that you had this gap, that's something you could definitely talk about in your cover letter. Because some people might see that, like, oh, what was this person doing for the past 3 years? So if you feel like that's kind of like the elephant in the room, you can certainly address it in the cover letter. They may ask you in the job interview as well. But again, you don't have to go into too much detail. But if you, during that time where, taking classes, doing some professional development, maybe building a new skill, if you are being proactive in a different kind of way, you can showcase that again in the cover letter, talking about it in the job interview. to address that. Now, if you're in school, I don't consider that a gap because you're getting your education. But other things like personal life happens. We're human, and I think people can be understandable. If not, I don't know if I want to work for that organization. Awesome. All right. I know time flies when you're having fun. There's so much. I know we don't have a ton of time left here. I do want to address the applicant tracking system. You're going to hear so much controversy and debate around ATS. And so I just want to relay information that I hear from attending workshops from recruiters, people that do use ATS, some of the things to really think about. You might be on Pinterest or on Instagram, and you're going to see things like, this is the new 2023 resume format. And it's this fancy picture, bullet points and charts and boxes and fancy colors. While that looks beautiful, a lot of these online, IA platforms do not read these boxes or charts. So I like to keep it simple. The human eye is going to be looking at it at some point, and they just want to know that you are qualified and that you have the skills and experiences to fill that role. So you don't have to get fancy. People care more about your background and your experience. So when you're doing your resume, I always say, do a Word doc, convert it into a PDF, and send that to the employer, or when you're applying online. Avoid using any graphics, headers, footers, and then also acronyms if possible. I know some of you are in industries where you can't really use an entire you have to use an acronym, but whenever possible, try to spell things out. I just wanted to make mention of ATS. And again, our offices can help you strengthen some of your resume. So I just wanted to mention here too, looking at your current resume as you're getting ready to enter the job market or whatever your situation is, you can make some basic tweaks on your own. So if you're seeing things that are passive, like assisted, responsible for, I want you to really challenge yourself to beef up those bullet points, right? And using numbers. So here, like, gave training classes on various health topics. Start with that action verb. Conducted 25 plus training classes on health topics, including diabetes, obesity prevention, and substance abuse, to Spanish-speaking peer health educators. This bullet alone tells me that this person can present. They have knowledge on different health diseases and prevention, and that they're bilingual. So if your bullet point can showcase multiple skills, then you know that is a strong action verb. So these are just, again, some examples of how to update that your resume. And again, if you need help, Career Services always has a resume. I know you all do drop-in hours. If you're an LAS student, we can support that as well, or your corresponding career office. You all have access to some type of career resource. Any questions or thoughts about resumes before I move on? I usually get a ton of questions about that. And Missy will be doing a resume specific workshop, so you want to attend that as well. Always have someone look at your resume. Always. Somebody might find something that you haven't considered. Thank you, Missy. All right. Same thing, cover letter. You want to make sure, like, one of the things that I've always found is people writing a fluffy cover letter that has no context. Cover letter is to really show why you are interested in the position, what skills you bring, and how does it align with your interest in that organization, and how it align your values align with the mission of the organization. So telling your story, it's not a rehash of your resume. So really, this is where the storytelling piece comes in. I just wanted to just mention just kind of a few points. I don't know if people have questions about the cover letter. This is the part that sometimes people stop in their tracks, where they're like, oh, I'm applying to jobs that don't require a cover letter, because it does take time and energy. I do have a link to some cover letter tools with some cover letter samples and how to go about writing one to make it a little bit easier for you. No questions or thoughts on resumes and cover letters?
Anyone? Any questions? Because I know sometimes, like Liz said, we get a lot of questions, and it's okay. You know, you might still be processing too, and that's okay. So Liz, a few people have asked, so I think I'm going to ask if that's okay. They want to know if they'll have access to the slides, and I'm not sure we asked you. Are you able to share the slides after the presentation?
Absolutely. That's why I put links in there. And
Perfect.
I like this presentation is I feel like it's a job search guide. It's really just to, you know, help you, like if you're not sure and you just need a little bit of structure and strategy, that's what this is. And also, so you all know the kind of work that we do in our offices and how we can support you. So again, like for me, I feel like this is just like things to consider as you approach your job search. That's kind of how I see this presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. One of the things I want to mention, and like there's so many factors in this job, in the job search process. I will tell you that I've worked with grad students, I've worked with people in different levels, and I've had recruiters reach out to me and say, Liz, I just got an application from a student from, you know, XYZ, and they just sent me this. They basically, like someone had written the employer, enclosed is my application. And the employer was like, I am not even going to consider this person because of the way they communicated via email. So those small things can really make a difference. So always follow the directions. I had a colleague who would throw out applications if they didn't follow the instructions of her application. So follow directions. If the employer wants you to, you know, submit your application Word, PDF, again, it could be a deal breaker. Save your resume and cover letter with your full name. Not just like resume one. So get into the habit of saving your documents with your name. Use a clear subject line, title of position, your name, because these recruiters are applying for a ton of things. I've had recruiters call me out. We were doing an event and I'm like, oh, we're excited to have you join us at our event. They're like, remind me of your event. We have like so many events this month. What date exactly is your event? So they are busy people, so make it as easy as possible for them. So when you're responding or sending an email, introduce yourself, let them know who you are, that you're interested in the position. So to put context in that email. Again, I mentioned this because these are things that I hear all the time. And this, you can have the best resume, the best cover letter, the best credentials, but this can be a deal breaker. All right. These are just some examples. Again, I was trying to figure out what my audience is going to be like today. So I wanted to be mindful. I know we're running out of time here, but I do want to share a few LinkedIn tools to kind of keep in mind. And I think this might be probably the most helpful for many of you that are here today. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my LinkedIn and show you. All right. So when you are doing your search, I know a lot of you will probably go under the jobs tab, which is okay. You want to do that search, but I like to use a different strategy. So someone said, I'm going to do jobs in like health informatics. So I'm just typing jobs in health informatics. So yeah, the nice list is here, but if you go to posts, a lot of recruiters may be talking about jobs that they're hiring for within their posts. People are having conversations about these types of jobs. So this is another strategy that I would recommend as well. You can get ideas, you know, job titles, organization names. So this is a great place to just start thinking about that, right? So things that you might not have been privy to, resources, again, job opportunities, organizations, different platforms that maybe you hadn't considered that are specific to health informatics. So this is something that, I attended a webinar where it was like using, some job search strategy. So I think this has been really instrumental and helpful. So I would say, check that out, and doing jobs in, and then your title. Can someone give me, let's see, I want to give you another strategy here. Can someone give me a company name that you're interested in? Type it in.
We have a vote for Epic
All right. So we're going to do.
or CVS Health. Those are the two that we have
Oh,
votes.
yes. These are great organizations. All right. So if you go to Epic, here we go, software development. So one thing is also, if you go to Epic and you're like, these are the kinds of organizations I'm interested in. On the right-hand side, it gives you ideas for similar companies that you may want to explore. And so you can this is how a great way to start developing your list of organizations. So like Cerner would be another one that you might want to explore. And then the other thing, what I like about this is that if you want to get to know more about the company, you can click on Life, and this gives you more information about working at Epic. This is actually a new feature that they've created called Life. And I just read an article that there's going to be another feature that says that you're interested in the organization. So I guess watch out for that new tool. I think it rolls out later this month. And then recruiters will have you in mind because it'll be like tagged that you have an interest in that company. So something to think about. LinkedIn is always rolling out new different, resources and things. And so this is another place to really start thinking about people, what they're doing, looking at their job titles, where they're working. This can give you some ideas for your job search as well. And then the other piece that I always like to share is if you go to UIC's page, which you should all be following as alums, or soon to be alums, if you go to the alumni tab under UIC, you can do a search by where people work, where they live. So let's say if you want to do, I'm going to do CVS Health, you can identify alumni that are currently working there. And so this is a great way to start building your network too, and kind of seeing what people have been doing. So alumni is always a good place to start in establishing these connections. And our offices can definitely support those connection introductions as well. All right. So I know that I've talked a lot. Any questions? I'm gonna just share a few tools here since I'm on LinkedIn. If you're prepping for an interview, there's the interview prep feature on LinkedIn as well. It's under jobs. I have my students do this, where they have to practice and answer questions. You can record yourself, see yourself. I mean, nowadays everything's on Zoom. So this is another great tool to consider. You all as UIC students have access to LinkedIn Learning. It's free to you. Other people have to pay for this. Some people are not aware that they have access to this. I had a student that was applying to the EPA, and she saw that there was a skill that they were looking for that she didn't quite have. So she went on LinkedIn Learning and she took a course on, I don't even remember what specific skill, but there are over 1,000 courses that you can take if you feel like you need to supplement some of your skills. Maybe you want, statistics, or in your world of health information management, so informatics. So here are just some ideas of courses that you can also explore through LinkedIn Learning. All right, I think that's my time.
Yeah, Liz, this was so informative as always. Thank you for all these great like features. I think we maybe have one more question. So then it looks like Ruth is asking a question about like networking on LinkedIn and Handshake versus like not being people in person. I think she's looking maybe for suggestions just about like how to network in general.
Yeah, so I would say like do both, right? If you can meet people in person, that's great. But if you're like, I'm kind of trying to step out of my comfort zone, and virtual is kind of a little bit easier at the beginning. I think that's great, and eventually taking it to in person. Yeah, so I say virtual is pretty much similar as in person, right? Like you don't just go up to a person, in real life, in person, and be like, hey, can we be friends, or let's chat, like there's a way to connect with someone. You introduce yourself. So when you're looking for someone, like for instance, I know someone had said like CVS Health. So I'm just gonna go on here and see, just to demo this. If I look at people, and I'm just really just gonna just be random here. I'm gonna look at Manuel. And so let's say, for instance, I'm really intrigued by his background. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting job. Like, how did he get to this? Like, I'd love to learn a little bit more about his background. So the first thing, obviously, I'm going to connect with Manuel, and I'm just going to add a note. Hi, Manuel. My name is Liz Herrera. I am finishing up my master's in public health. I see that you are in healthcare innovation strategy, or whatever the case. I'm very impressed of your LinkedIn profile. It'd be great to connect with you. Keeping it simple, right? Just basic. And then Manuel's gonna be like, awesome, this person wants to connect with me. Now your LinkedIn profile represents that you have that background, because they're gonna probably check out your LinkedIn profile first. Once they accept your connection, you're gonna have access to their contact info, or you can message them directly. And then this is where you take it to the next step. Thank you so much for connecting with me. As I mentioned, I'm very impressed by your background. Would you be open to having a 20-minute conversation with me, as I'd love to learn more about your experience? And I'll tell you that majority of people are willing to talk about their career journey, and people that you don't know. Like I do it all the time. I contact random people all the time. And I've had some great conversations with people on different industries. So especially if they're alums. So I would say that if you can use Handshake, UIC Connected, LinkedIn, don't shy away. Now, people might not respond. That's okay. There are a ton of people that are going to want to talk to you. So that's also another part of like the risk taking of being rejected. But don't take that personal. Some people don't go on their LinkedIn, so it might be that they don't even see it. But this is a good place to start.
These are great tips, and thanks for just showing all these new features on LinkedIn too. I think we're all learning, different things that are LinkedIn's kind of like popping up with. So Liz, thank you again. I know you have a very busy schedule, a lot going on, and we just feel really fortunate that you're willing to share your expertise and your ideas with students and alums. And then we will send out the slides and the recording in the next like couple days. I think it'll take us a little bit of time to get everything together. So just FYI. And we also do have a short survey that we will be, sending out to you. And I know sometimes we get a lot of surveys, but your feedback really helps us figure out, anything that you wish was covered wasn't covered, or vice versa. So please take the time, that like the 30 seconds it's going to take you to do that survey, and we can share that feedback with Liz. That's helpful for Liz, so she knows what people are taking away or suggestions that you have. So thank you again for coming. We are going to reconvene after spring break for the class of 2023 series. I'll be talking about resume, so we'll dive in and I think have a really great discussion. So I'll stay on for a minute or two if you have any additional questions. But thank you again for joining us. It was really just like lovely to learn from Liz and to have all of you here. So thank you for